Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Sarah, and in today's video we are going to be discussing how I mitigate hand pain. You all know that I still get hand pain. I mean, I just talked about it in my last market vlog. I will admit I crocheted 118 plushies if I recall correctly, so I was bound to feel pain after doing that. But these are some things that I do while I'm crocheting that kind of just help me crochet more with less pain. A lot of the advice out there has to do with taking breaks. I think we've all heard that before. So this advice is less taking breaks and more on things that you can apply while crocheting or right before you start crocheting to hopefully help keep that pain at a minimum. I have two pretty major points in this video. The first one has to do with tools and the second one has to do with yarn. So we'll just start with the tools. Certain tools can seriously hurt your hands and your arms. Now these tools can be sewing needles, metal needles, or they can be crochet hooks. So for sewing needles, I try and use larger needles. So those plastic needles that I use all the time, those ones tend to not hurt my hands as much. And then if I am crocheting something that I can use a metal needle on, which, side note, I just have to say this, I personally think that plastic needles with big eyes prevent the size 6 chenille yarn from falling apart too much. If you're sewing with metal needles and your yarn falls apart really easily, I recommend switching to plastic and seeing if there's a difference. But if I'm working with a yarn type that I can use a metal needle on, I will stick with my 5-inch weaving needles, which you have seen hopefully if you've been here before. You've seen on my channel loads of times. Those needles are amazing. The problem with short metal needles is that there's not much to grip onto, so when you're sewing with them you're really having to pinch them to pull them through, and that causes hand pain because you are pinching your fingers tightly together. So avoid that by simply using longer needles or bigger needles. Now, what about crochet hooks? There's two different hook types. There is the inline and my personal favorite, the tapered crochet hook. If you are crocheting along and you find that your hook is constantly getting stuck or it doesn't glide smoothly, because when you're crocheting, your hook should just slide right in and out of each stitch really easily. It shouldn't be a struggle to pull it through at all. And if it is a struggle, you might be using the wrong hook type. A lot of people, I've heard at least, prefer the inline hook, but I do prefer the tapered hook. So the difference mainly is the inline has a deeper groove. I find that if I use the inline, I get caught on my stitches all the time because that hook is deeper. And with the tapered, it's a lot more smooth, so I just glide between the stitches a lot easier. But if you're using one type and you find that you're crocheting, it's really hard to crochet quickly, it's hard to crochet smoothly, then you should try the other hook type. At least that's my advice. The different handle types for crochet hooks might be an issue for hand pain as well. I use hooks from Hobby Lobby. They're very inexpensive, so when I wear through them I can just go get a new one and it's not a big deal. These guys are tapered. They have the special handle, the ergonomic, hopefully I'm saying that right. Those hooks will be better on your hands. Not 100% of the time. Everyone is unique in how they crochet, how they hold the hooks. So you might need to experiment, which is really my main advice for this video. If you're having hand pain from crocheting, you might want to experiment with your different materials you're using, different hook types, different needle types, and see if there's anything out there that might work better for you. I personally prefer a crochet hook with the smaller grip, such as my Hobby Lobby hooks, but a lot of people prefer larger handles or smaller ones. So like I said, experiment on that and see what you prefer. I think that's all the advice I have for tools, so let's go talk about some yarn real quick. Different yarn types and textures can seriously harm your hands. I have first-hand experience with this, and it's not the same for everyone. For me personally, I have found that stiff yarns like Bernat Blanket or even the really bad quality Sweet Snuggles Light, those yarns can really hurt my hands just because I want to be able to crochet smoothly, and I can't do that with yarn textures that are super stiff. So if you're having pretty severe hand pain, it could simply just be the yarn type you're using. So if I am working with Bernat Blanket for a long time, I will get hand pain. So in order to mitigate that but still use Bernat Blanket, I will work on a project with Bernat Blanket, and either I'll be halfway through, or I just started, or I finished it and I'm starting to feel hand pain, I'm going to switch back to my good Sweet Snuggles Light or Naughty Pony, because those yarns are super soft and they do not hurt my hands pretty much at all unless I crochet an insane amount with them. But for the most part, they are nice on my hands. So that's kind of how I balance it while still using the Bernat Blanket. I mean, Bernat Blanket, I will admit, has better colors than Sweet Snuggles Light. The texture is definitely an issue for me. Now, the other important note about yarn types is that you might need to adjust your hook size. A lot of people will recommend similar hook sizes. So if I'm doing Sweet Snuggles Light, I'll recommend a 5mm hook. I find that I can get tight stitches with minimal hand pain with a 5mm hook. If I shrunk it, my hands would hurt. If I made it bigger, the stitches will get looser. One of those things is adjusting your hook size depending on what yarn you're working with, and experiment with it. See what makes bigger stitches versus cleaner stitches, more hand pain versus less hand pain. So my final note, I know I said that I wouldn't talk about taking breaks, but I do want to give my 2 cents on this idea in general. Now, if you ask me, I do take breaks, but not intentionally. If I were to intentionally take breaks, it's just not in my blood. I don't take breaks, and I know that a lot of people are probably similar in that regard, where we don't want to take breaks. We're crocheting, we got all of these materials out, we're all set up, we're watching TV or whatever we're listening to, we're ready to crochet for hours, okay? My advice for taking breaks is you don't have to take an actual break, like doing nothing for 10 minutes. You can take an active break, kind of like those workout videos you see occasionally where they're like active break where you walk in place, but the hard stuff you take a break from. It's kind of like that. So bringing back my Bernat Blanket example, if I start having hand pain while crocheting Bernat Blanket, I will either switch to another project, or I will do something with the Bernat Blanket project, such as embroidering eyes, or stuffing it, or sewing something together instead of crocheting it all and then sewing it together at the end. Kind of active breaks that hurt your hands less, but you're still accomplishing something. And to go even further, you could even clean your yarn stash or pick up something you needed to do. That way you're still being super productive without crocheting so much that your hands are injured. Now, you could also switch projects completely. If you know one project doesn't hurt your hands, but one does, you can switch between them, which can be a little complicated, I will admit, especially with plushies, keeping track of both patterns, but it's better than being forced to take a break because your hands hurt so bad. That is my advice on taking breaks. Take active breaks instead of taking breaks where you do nothing, because at least for me personally, I don't take breaks doing nothing. Alright, that is all the advice I have for you in today's video. If I missed something, feel free to leave a comment below. Maybe I'll do a part 2 to this video. I just kind of had a hard time thinking of what else I do. I mean, mainly it's based on how I hold my hook, or what the yarn type is, the texture, different yarn sizes. Those are really my main things I focus on while crocheting. If you have any advice, feel free to drop it below. I'm sure you will help someone somewhere, including me. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. Make sure to check out my coffee shop if you haven't already, spelled Ko-Fi. If you watched all the way to the end, which you did, you guys all get a coupon code if you want to use it, and the coupon code is single crochet in all caps, and you will get 10% off your total order if you apply it at checkout. And I think that is it. Stay tuned for my next market vlog. It's going to be one of my last ones before festival day, which is scary but exciting. With all of that said, I will see you then, hopefully. Bye!